The cook reaches into the barrel. His hand comes up with a square of something that might once have been bread. He taps it against the table. The sound is wrong. Not the soft thud of food, the hard crack of stone against wood. He squints at it in the dim light below deck. Something moves. Tiny legs, dozens of them, crawling through holes bored into what sailors called their daily bread. The cook shrugs, drops it into the pot anyway. Dinner is served. This was breakfast. This was lunch. This was supper. Day after day, week after week, month after month. The same wormy crackers, the same gray meat floating in brine, the same green water that smelled like something died in it, because something probably did. Watch until the end, and you will discover why pirates actually preferred food crawling with insects, how they tested their rum with gunpowder and fire, why one dish was so important that the most successful pirate in history was eating it the moment he died, and the animal that pirates valued more than gold itself. This is the true story of what pirates ate, and why most of them were grateful just to eat it all. Forget everything you think you know about pirate feasts. The movies show tables groaning with roasted meats, bowls of tropical fruit, tankards overflowing with rum. Pirates laughing, eating, celebrating their plunder. The reality was different, brutally different. A pirate ship was a floating wooden box. No refrigeration, no preservation beyond salt and smoke. No way to keep food fresh once you left port. Everything rotted. Everything spoiled. Everything attracted creatures that wanted to eat it before you could. The challenge was not finding treasure. The challenge was staying alive long enough to spend it. Let us start with the foundation of every pirate diet. The food that kept more sailors alive than any other. The food they loved to hate and hated to love. Hardtack, also called ship's biscuit, also called pilot bread, also called, by sailors who knew it too well, molar breakers, tooth dullers, sheet iron, dog biscuits, and the name that tells you everything you need to know about what happened to it at sea: worm castles. Hardtack was simple: flour, water, maybe a pinch of salt if the baker felt generous. Mixed into dough, rolled flat, baked until every trace of moisture had fled. Then baked again, sometimes baked 4 times for voyages expected to last months. The result was a square of something that resembled bread the way a rock resembles a pillow. Dense, hard, capable of lasting years if kept dry, capable of breaking teeth if you tried to eat it without preparation. No one bit into hardtack, not if they wanted to keep their teeth. Sailors developed rituals. They would soak it in water, in coffee if they had coffee, in rum if they had rum, in whatever liquid might soften the stone-like squares into something a human jaw could manage. Some would crumble it with their fists, or smash it with a belaying pin, or pound it against the deck until it became powder. Then mix that powder with water to make a paste, a mush, something that could be swallowed without cracking molars. Others fried it in the grease that floated on top of the salt meat barrels. The fat softened the hardtack while adding flavor. A distant memory of what food might taste like if you had access to food. But here is where the story gets interesting, and disgusting, and strangely logical. Hardtack attracted visitors. Weevils. small beetles that laid their eggs inside grain products. The larvae would hatch, bore through the biscuit, eat the softer interior, and eventually emerge as adult beetles to start the cycle again. After a few weeks at sea, any barrel of hardtack would be crawling with them, tiny brown bodies, tiny legs, moving through the holes they had carved in what was supposed to be your dinner. Sailors had options. Some would tap their hardtack against the table before eating. The vibration would cause the weevils to fall out. Most of them, anyway. You could brush away what you saw and pretend the rest did not exist. Some would eat in darkness. What you cannot see cannot disgust you. Swallow fast. Do not think about the extra crunch. Some would soak their hardtack in hot liquid. Coffee worked best. The weevils would float to the surface. You could skim them off and drink the liquid beneath. Mostly. But here is the strangest part. Sailors became suspicious of hardtack that had no weevils. Clean biscuits meant the bread was so bad that even insects would not touch it. Weevils became a strange sort of quality control. If the bugs were eating it, maybe you could too. Hardtack provided calories, but calories alone would not keep a man working the rigging in tropical heat. Pirates needed protein. They got it from salt meat. Beef and pork, packed in barrels of brine so concentrated that nothing could grow in it. Nothing could rot. Nothing could change. The salt preserved the meat for months, years sometimes. The oldest salt beef in some Navy stores had been packed before the sailors eating it were born. The process started long before any ship left port. Butchers would cut the meat into chunks, pack it tight into oak barrels, pour salt over every surface, add brine until the meat floated, seal the barrel, let it sit. The salt drew moisture from the meat. The moisture mixed with the salt. The meat became something new, something that would not spoil because nothing alive could survive in that chemical desert. By the time sailors ate it, the meat had transformed. Hard as wood, gray as the sea, so salty that eating it without soaking would crack your lips and swell your tongue. Cooks would fish the meat from barrels the night before, soak it in water for hours, sometimes days, trying to draw out enough salt to make it edible. Then they boiled it, long, slow boiling, to soften tissue that had become as tough as rope. The water would turn gray. A layer of fat would float to the top. Sailors called this slush. It was skimmed off and saved. Nothing was wasted. The meat itself, after all that preparation, was still challenging, tough, fibrous, a distant cousin of what it had been when the animal was alive. Sailors would chew and chew and chew, their jaws developing muscles that landlubbers never needed. Nicknames for salt beef included salt horse, because after enough processing, it bore no resemblance to any particular animal. It was just protein. Gray protein that kept you alive. But here is what the history books often miss. Pirates had access to something that naval sailors and merchant crews could only dream about. Fresh meat. Living protein. An animal so valuable that pirates would fight for it, plan expeditions around it, and build their entire provisioning strategies around capturing it. The sea turtle. A single green sea turtle could weigh 300 pounds. Some reached 400. That was enough meat to feed a crew for days. The meat itself was unlike anything else available at sea. Tender, flavorful. Sailors compared it to the finest veal. The fat rendered into oil for cooking. The eggs, when they could be found, were delicacies. But here is why turtles were truly precious. they could be kept alive. Flip a turtle onto its back, and it cannot right itself. It will lie there, helpless but alive, for weeks, months sometimes. Pirates would stack turtles in the hold like living barrels, splash them with seawater occasionally to keep them hydrated. Fresh meat that stayed fresh. No salt, no brine, no gray transformation into something barely edible. Just flip a turtle, butcher it, and eat. The buccaneers who prowled the Caribbean built their entire lifestyle around turtles. They recruited native hunters called strikers, Mosquito Indians who could spear turtles with uncanny accuracy. These men were valued crew members, their skills worth more than swordsmanship. Tortuga. The most famous pirate haven in history. The name means turtle. Christopher Columbus named it because the island's shape reminded him of the animal. Pirates did not choose Tortuga just for its hidden harbors and corrupt officials. They chose it because turtles nested on nearby beaches, because turtle hunting grounds surrounded it, because a ship based at Tortuga could provision itself with fresh meat indefinitely. The buccaneer Alexander Exquemelin, who sailed with Henry Morgan, wrote extensively about turtles. He described their meat as the greatest delicacy available to pirates. He noted that eating too much could make your skin greasy, a small price for fresh protein. Turtles were not the only living food source pirates exploited. Manatees swam in Caribbean waters. Sea cows, they were called, and the name was appropriate. Their meat tasted like beef. A single manatee could weigh 1,000 pounds, enough to feed an entire crew. Seals appeared in cooler waters. One privateer crew stranded on Juan Fernandez Island preferred young seal meat to their ship's provisions. They said it tasted like English lamb. Birds landed on ships and paid the price. Pigeons, seabirds, anything with wings and meat on its bones. Oily flesh was better than no flesh. Some crews became less selective as desperation grew. Records exist of pirates eating monkeys, dolphins, sharks, alligators when they found them, penguins in southern waters. If it moved and had protein, it was food. And when nothing moved, when all the turtles were eaten and all the salt meat gone and all the hardtack crawling with more weevil than flour, pirates ate whatever remained. Henry Morgan's crew, during their famous march across the Isthmus of Panama, ran out of provisions. They ate leather. Not by choice, by necessity. They sliced their leather bags into strips, soaked them in water to soften them, grilled them over fire, tried to convince their stomachs that this was food. Leather was animal skin, technically protein. The chemicals used to tan it were probably poisonous in large quantities, but large quantities were not available. They ate what they had and survived long enough to sack Panama City. Other crews ate worse. Rats that infested every ship became emergency protein. Some sailors raised them deliberately, a grotesque livestock that fed on stolen crumbs and reproduced endlessly. When food ran out, the rats did not. But pirates did not always starve. Sometimes they feasted, and when they feasted, they ate salmagundi. The name comes from a French word meaning hodgepodge, bringing together things that do not belong together, making something greater from disparate parts. Salmagundi was exactly that. Take whatever meat you have, turtle if you are lucky, chicken, pork, beef, fish, duck, pigeon, whatever the last raid provided. Roast it, chop it into chunks, marinate it in spiced wine. Add whatever vegetables survived, cabbage, onions, palm hearts from Caribbean trees, pickled items from barrels that had not yet gone completely bad. Add whatever extras you could find. Hard-boiled eggs, anchovies, pickled herring, olives if you had captured a ship from the Mediterranean, grapes, mangoes from Caribbean ports, whatever looked edible. Mix everything together. Season heavily. Garlic, salt, pepper, mustard seed, oil, vinegar. The spices covered any flavors that had gone questionable. The variety created interest where monotony had reigned. Bartholomew Roberts, known as Black Bart, was the most successful pirate of the Golden Age. Over 400 ships captured in 3 years, more than any other pirate in recorded history. On February 10, 1722, a British naval vessel caught up with Roberts off the coast of Africa. The battle that followed would end his career and his life. When the first shots were fired, Black Bart Roberts was eating breakfast. Salmagundi, the quintessential pirate dish. The last meal of the greatest pirate who ever lived. He died with his boots on and food in his belly. There are worse ways to go. Of course, pirates did not eat alone. They drank. Constantly. Rum was more than recreation. Rum was survival. Fresh water spoiled within weeks. It grew algae. It turned slimy. It bred creatures that made drinking it a gamble with your health. Sailors called the green growth that formed on stored water pond scum. They drank it anyway, when nothing else was available, and hoped their stomachs could handle the consequences. But mix water with alcohol and something changes. The alcohol slows bacterial growth. The mixture stays drinkable longer. Adding rum to water was not indulgence. It was preservation technology. When England conquered Jamaica in 1655, they gained access to unlimited rum. The Caribbean sugar plantations produced molasses. Molasses fermented into rum, and rum became the fuel that powered English naval expansion. Every sailor received a ration, half a pint of rum per day, pure, undiluted, enough to render a man useless for most of the afternoon if consumed at once, which is exactly what happened. Admiral Edward Vernon, commanding British forces in the Caribbean in 1740, had a problem. His sailors were drunk. Constantly, dangerously. They would down their entire rum ration in a single gulp and spend the rest of the day stumbling into things and falling overboard. Vernon wore a distinctive cloak made from a fabric called grogram. His sailors nicknamed him Old Grog. The nickname was not affectionate. In August of 1740, Old Grog issued an order that changed history. The rum ration would be diluted. 4 parts water to 1 part rum, mixed on deck in view of an officer to prevent cheating. Sailors were furious. They had not signed up for watered drinks. But Vernon was unrelenting. He suggested they might purchase sugar and limes to make the mixture more palatable. The diluted rum would be served twice daily instead of once. The sailors named this weakened drink after the admiral they blamed for it, grog, an insult that became a tradition. The tradition spread. Other commanders adopted it. The dilution became standard. Sugar and lime became common additions, accidentally providing vitamin C that helped prevent scurvy. The entire Royal Navy eventually ran on grog. But pirates had no admirals forcing them to dilute their rum. They drank it strong. They drank it often. They drank it because the alternative was water that might kill them, or sobriety that felt like punishment. Here is something that sounds like legend, but was documented practice. Pirates tested their rum with fire. The concern was dilution. Dishonest merchants would water down rum before selling it. Ships' pursers might skim from the ration and add water to cover the theft. How could a sailor know if he was getting what he was owed? The test was simple, brutal, effective. Take a small sample of rum. Mix in a few grains of gunpowder. Strike a spark. If the mixture caught fire, the rum was strong enough. At least 57% alcohol. What came to be called proof strength. The fire proved the rum had not been watered. If the mixture refused to burn, someone was cheating. And on a pirate ship, cheating meant consequences. Not everything pirates ate was miserable. The Caribbean offered foods that European sailors had never imagined. Coconuts that provided both food and liquid. Bananas that ripened quickly but tasted unlike anything from home. Plantains that could substitute for bread when boiled or roasted. Avocados grew wild on Caribbean islands. Pirates mashed them, added salt and whatever spices they had, created what we would recognize today: guacamole on a pirate ship. History is strange. Mangoes arrived from Southeast Asia during the Golden Age of piracy. Sweet, creamy, full of the vitamin C that could prevent scurvy. Pirates who ate mangoes stayed healthier than those who did not, though no one understood why. Limes grew everywhere in the Caribbean. Their juice flavored food and drink. Their acid helped preserve other items, and their vitamin content, still unknown at the time, saved countless lives. Eventually, English sailors would be called limeys because of how many limes their navy consumed. Speak of scurvy, and you speak of the greatest killer of sailors in history. The disease came slowly. First, fatigue, weakness, aching joints that made climbing rigging painful. Then the gums would swell, turn purple, begin to bleed. Teeth would loosen, fall out. The breath became unbearable. Wounds that had healed would reopen. Scars would split apart. Old injuries returned, as if the body was forgetting how to maintain itself. Because it was. Vitamin C is essential for tissue repair. Without it, the body literally comes apart. 2 million sailors died from scurvy during the Age of Sail. 2 million men who rotted from the inside while their ships sailed on. More than combat, more than storms, more than all other diseases combined. Pirates had an advantage here. They rarely spent as long at sea as naval vessels. A navy ship might patrol for months without touching land. A merchant vessel might cross entire oceans on scheduled routes. But pirates operated differently. They raided. They returned to friendly ports. They spent their plunder and re-provisioned. This meant access to fresh food, fruits and vegetables that prevented scurvy. Pirates who based out of Caribbean havens could eat mangoes and limes and coconuts that their naval counterparts could only dream about. After 1718, when the pirate haven at Nassau fell and the Royal Navy began hunting pirates across the Caribbean, this advantage disappeared. Pirates had to stay at sea longer. Provisions became harder to acquire. Scurvy began claiming pirates the way it had always claimed other sailors. Every pirate ship had a cook, usually. The position was not prestigious. The cook was often a disabled sailor, someone who had lost a limb or been injured badly enough that they could no longer work the rigging. The galley became their domain because they could not function anywhere else. Skills varied wildly. Some cooks had actual experience preparing food. Others were assigned the job because no one else wanted it, and they were unable to do anything else. The galley itself was a cramped space containing a brick-lined firebox. Fire on a wooden ship surrounded by tar and canvas. The danger was obvious. Cooking only happened in calm weather, when the ship was stable enough to manage flames without burning down. Everything was prepared in a single large pot. Boiled. Always boiled. Roasting required equipment that few ships carried. Baking required ovens that took up precious space. Frying used fat that was in short supply. But boiling worked. One pot, one fire. Throw in whatever needed cooking and let it simmer. The result was stews, soups, porridges, variations on a theme of boiled ingredients in liquid. Sometimes the liquid was water, sometimes broth from the salt meat, sometimes rum when nothing else was available. Burgoo was the name for the standard shipboard porridge. Oats or other grains boiled with water until soft. Add butter if you had it. Sugar if you were lucky. Salt meat if the crew had earned a good meal. It was bland, filling, possible to make in large quantities without skill. Feeding a pirate crew was expensive. Unlike Navy vessels, which drew provisions from Admiralty stores, pirates had to purchase or steal everything they ate. The articles that governed pirate ships often specified food quality. Crews voted on provisions the way they voted on destinations and captains. A captain who could not keep his men fed would not remain captain for long. When pirates captured merchant vessels, they searched for food before they searched for gold. Flour, meat, wine, fresh provisions that could extend a voyage or improve morale. Sometimes the food was more valuable than any cargo. Raids on coastal towns targeted food supplies as often as treasure. The buccaneer Henry Morgan built entire expeditions around provisioning stops. His men would hunt cattle and pigs on Spanish islands, smoking the meat over slow fires to preserve it. The technique, called boucan, gave buccaneers their name. Boucan, a French word for the wooden frame used to smoke meat over a low fire. The process took time, but produced dried meat that could last for weeks. On the island of Hispaniola, escaped slaves and deserters from various European nations developed communities around this practice. They hunted wild pigs and cattle, smoked the meat, sold it to passing ships. These hunters were called boucaniers, barbecuers, men who lived by smoking meat and selling provisions. When opportunities arose, Boucanier discovered that raiding Spanish ships paid better than selling meat. They became buccaneers. The name stuck even as the profession changed from cooking to combat. So what did a typical day of eating look like for a Caribbean pirate? Wake to the smell of whatever the cook has produced, usually burgoo if the ship still had grain. Otherwise, hardtack soaked in the previous night's coffee or rum. Midday brought the larger meal, salt meat if the provisions held. Boiled with whatever vegetables remained in the stores. Hardtack on the side, crumbled into the stew to give it body. Rum ration to wash it down. Evening was whatever remained, scraps from the midday pot. More hardtack. More rum if the captain was generous. Perhaps some cheese if the barrel had not yet gone completely rancid. Every day the same. Every week the same. The monotony of shipboard meals was legendary. Men dreamed of fresh bread, of meat that had not soaked in brine, of vegetables that retained color and crunch. When pirates captured a ship carrying provisions, the celebration was genuine. New foods, different flavors, a break from the endless gray diet that defined life at sea. Food was more than nutrition. Food was morale. A well-fed crew would follow a captain into battle. A hungry crew would consider mutiny. The connection between full bellies and willing fighters was understood by every successful pirate commander. Bad provisions caused more trouble than bad weather. Sailors complained about weevils and rotting meat the way they complained about nothing else. The quality of the cook could make or break a voyage. A talented cook was valued as highly as a skilled navigator. The articles that pirates signed included guarantees about food, specified minimum rations, required equal distribution. A captain who fed himself better than his crew violated the democratic principles that governed pirate vessels. So there you have it, the true diet of pirates. Hardtack crawling with insects, salt meat the color of driftwood, turtles flipped onto their backs and stored like living barrels, rum tested with gunpowder and fire, salmagundi made from whatever the last raid provided. Not the romantic feasts of Hollywood, not the groaning tables of pirate films, just survival, day after day, meal after miserable meal. Eating to stay alive long enough to find treasure, then eating treasure's provisions and doing it all again. The golden age of piracy lasted roughly 30 years. In that time, thousands of men chose this life, chose the weevils and the salt meat and the green water, chose the hardtack and the grog and the endless boiled stews. Why? Because the alternative was often worse. Navy rations were no better, and the discipline was brutal. Merchant sailors worked longer hours for worse pay. At least pirates chose their own captains and voted on their provisions. They ate terribly. They drank heavily. They died young, but they died free men. And sometimes, on good days, they ate salmagundi. So that is what pirates actually ate. Feeling hungry? Hit that like button if you will never complain about your cooking again. At least your bread does not have legs. Write in the comments which pirate food horrified you most. The weevil-infested hardtack? The gray salt horse? The rats? The leather? And subscribe to Tales of High Seas. Otherwise, the ghost of a pirate cook will visit your kitchen. He will look at your refrigerator full of fresh food and weep. He will watch you throw away leftovers that would have seemed like a feast to his crew. He will tap your bread against the counter just to make sure nothing crawls out. And then he will steal your rum. Just subscribe. It is easier than explaining to a dead buccaneer why you have so much food and still complain about what is for dinner. Fair winds and following seas.